Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Parker X. In this episode, we're sitting down with Ashley Hicks, Parking Operations Technology and Project Manager at JBG Smith. We do a deep dive into her background leading up to her role in parking at one of the premier real estate owners in the DC area, and we get into what her role entails and encompasses today and some of her favorite projects. Hope you enjoy. All right, this is Lester Mascon with Parker X, and today we have back on the show Ashley Hicks, Technology and Project Manager for JBG Smith.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Good.
Thanks for coming back on the show.
Yeah, no problem.
So I got a lot of feedback last time you were on, just kind of everything you were going into, like car charging stations, and I feel like we went into some good detail on that, but we really didn't dive into we kind of touched on another piece you were going into, which was like customer experience and wayfinding and just kind of that overall experience for the customers that are coming to your facilities. So I wanted to dive into a little more about that today. So what do you think? What are you trying to achieve?
Well,
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I haven't really been in the parking industry long, but I have had quite a background of retail, small businesses, online marketplace, everywhere that's going to interact with a customer.
Let's go through it. Tell them, let's start from the beginning.
So I actually started interning before I went to college with my mom's company. At the time, it was Macy Development, which I don't think no longer exists in DC. Just doing like office work and stuff like that. And then when I got into college, it was kind of always hammered into me for my mother to be like super successful all the time. And I didn't really like have a direct passion or drive for one particular like subject or industry. So I decided the best way to figure it out is to take on as many internships as I can. So I took on 7 internships through college.
Really?
Yep. I originally was like, I want to own my own art gallery because I'm creative and I like it and I like interacting with artists. So I interned at this small gallery called One Wicked Gallery. It was kind of spunky. And I was doing like curating for it. And so I got my first real taste of like what it's like to one, own an art gallery and 2, dealing with putting up and curating art shows. And very quickly, about 6 months later, realized that it's not something I want to invest my future into. It's a very hard business, and managing artists is probably one of the most difficult things I have experienced.
Worse than people like Parkers?
Yeah, it's just with them, it's like, they wait till the last minute to give you all of their artwork for their upcoming show, or they have a really hard time coming to collect the pieces that didn't sell. And there were shows I did as a like a feature on one particular piece and stuff like that. And we did have artists that we hung that literally the show sold before we even opened.
Wow.
That was a really cool experience, especially to be a part of it. But yeah, I went from that. I went to working for a post-production film company called Inna Cinema. They were the first company to really make post-production parts for the Red camera.
Okay.
So when Red first came out, that was kind of our specialty. We would just make accessories for the Red camera that often were complimented from Red to us that were better than their own products. Because it was all Swiss made. So, that was really cool. It was this one-man shop. He did his whole operation in his house. His brother owned the manufacturing side in Switzerland, and then he handled all the North American distribution. And he literally exploded overnight. And he was, definitely at that line where he was like not being able to fulfill supply. So it was really interesting. I signed on to learn web development and I ended up learning all of it pretty much.
Really?
Yeah. We were coding our website in a separate GUI while we had one active because at midnight we were going to switch it over, and we were fulfilling boxes and printing off shipping labels and responding on Red forums and social media tags. And it was a really cool experience. And I stayed there for about a year as an intern.
Sounds like fun, though.
Yeah, it was really fun. And it was really awesome to see just someone grow so fast. And he actually got an award from Obama, I think 30 under 30.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then I worked with...
What did you go to school for?
So I went to school for entrepreneurship and business development.
Really?
And then I minored in studio art
Okay.
with a medium in sculpture. So quite an array of... yeah. But I picked a major that I felt like could apply to anything and wouldn't have to, be so specific, like going a nursing route or going a mathematician route or whatever, so. And then,
liberal arts degree.
Yeah. I didn't want to go to art school because it's a great fantasy and it's very hard. And I think that artists as a whole, what's lacked in education for them is how to market themselves and determine their true value in a marketplace.
Well, I'll tell you, not certainly a parking topic, but I mean, people that are creative and people that are, can create are often not good at things like sales and business. I mean, it's not always true, but it's kind of one or the other usually.
Yeah. I actually went to school with this. Well, he didn't go to school, but he lived in the town where I went to school. His name's Zach Crane, and he created what's called the Freaker. And what it is, it's just a like woven knit sweater looking thing that goes over as a koozie on your bottles. But it can fit a can. It can fit all the way up to a gallon of milk, same size koozie. Wacky guy, super wacky, not someone you'd want to put into a public front face, but he is a CEO of his company. He went on Shark Tank and totally blew it. But, super creative, super inventive. I mean, he would create videos all the time. He transformed a bus into like a national grilled cheese traveling tour where he just went around and served grilled cheese and sold freakers. And that was how he really started his business. And to this day, I mean, those freakers are everywhere. They are in airports.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So sometimes, you could be super creative and also be able to maintain business growth as well. Just there are different facets for it. But after that, I went into I worked with a app called Next Glass, and it was almost like Pandora for beer, wine, and spirits.
Okay.
So it was very like a little baby, and we went through all these seed funding, and I was more of like an admin role for the chairman of the board and stuff like that. But I got to sit on a lot of the seed meetings and stuff, so that was a really cool experience. And see an app.
Amazing learning opportunities. What they are.
Mm-hmm. And now I think they were bought by Untapped.
Okay.
And I think now the CEO of Next Glass is now the CEO of Untapped. But, and I did some other things here and there. I worked at a pack and ship store, which honestly was probably my most valuable experience in college. Because the owner really stepped in as kind of a mentor for me and truly opened like all of his small business like books and showed me how to do year-to-year comparisons and all the accounting back end of it and inventory supply. And he was really, really, really big on customer service. And so that's what made his shop. And people would come in, they would hang out, and they would commandeer for a few hours, and made it kind of that cozy, homely feel. And it was literally just a pack and ship store that we sold stamps and tape boxes. But, people loved it. So
people remember good experiences.
Yep, exactly.
Usually we'll talk about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bad ones too, but
yeah. And I try to remind people too a lot of the time that we're always so quick to go and write like a bad experience, versus a positive one. And it is helpful to go in and kind of chime in with those positive
say something
here's
nice.
And there's. Yeah. And even like Anika and I, like we are going a mile a minute. And when even our team stops and says, wow, that looks great. It's like, oh my God, we got recognized, so it's a good feeling.
So now you're, how old are you now?
I'm 27.
So you're 27.
Yeah.
And you now the technology and project manager for, a massive company here in the DC area.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge role you have.
Yeah, it has definitely been challenged. It has been set a challenge for me. To me, it's funny because I talked to Nick about like my goals and ambitions for the future and stuff, and to me, I'm like, oh, this is just another like, I can master, I can figure it out kind of thing. But when people step back and they're like, hey, like you're in the same role as someone that's been in this industry for a really, really long time.
No doubt.
You know, it's hard because I don't like comparing people or comparing things, you know, one thing over the other. And I think that there's definitely an argument of experience basically in the industry or your education or just your common sense sometimes, you know, can trump something else. But
I think the industry definitely, it always needs new blood, right? You have to bring new ideas,
yeah.
bring just thought leadership to the industry.
Yeah.
So if you were to kind of describe what your role is, what would you, I know the title is, but what would you describe the role as? 'Cause there's not a lot of you on the team, so you're kind of doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, again, Nick and I have this conversation all the time, and sometimes we even argue about it. But, yeah, I mean...
Because project management usually means, like, everything.
Yeah, and, you know, learning, too, from parking, it's like, especially what's been a learning curve for me is, yes, I'm integrating technology, and I'm going through the project of implementing it, but I also have to sit there and finish it and make sure it's operational before I walk away. And that's taken a lot of mechanics of learning as well because every garage is different.
You're also front and center on the human element too of like the clients interacting with
yes,
the product. So.
Yes. And I've had my fair share, you know, of angry customers. And I try to, you know, always agree with their frustration and understanding. And most of their complaints are complaints that Nick and I have also made and have argued for them. But unfortunately, we're not the ones cutting the checks or own the property, so we can only do so much. And it does, you know, it does get a little tiring sometimes, and sometimes I feel like a little piece of my soul is gone. But, you know, and like I said, it's nice. I guess it's people that do recognize at the end of the day make it a little better. But yeah, so encompassing all of my role, I mean, basically, I'm supposed to be sitting down with all of our new tech vendors, anyone who has anything that's could possibly benefit our portfolio, and review it. And then we also decide whether or not we'd like to beta test it anywhere. That's typically what we do with new technology if it's not something that hasn't been on the market for X amount of years and completely tailored around our business. Outside of that, then yeah, I handle complete project management from step one to completion. So I have projects that are just simply adding EV chargers to properties. I have projects that are brand new development that we're coming in on day one and reviewing the drawings, looking at turn radiuses, striping plans. Now I'm getting into I've listened to my subcontractors so much. I'm like, hey, now I need a 4-inch conduit in the riser because we need this dedicated directly for parking. You know, what is my problem and how can I find the solution for new projects so that we don't keep running into the same infrastructure issues. And then, I mean, we've taken over lighting now. We're really getting heavily into lighting. I spend a lot of time searching for new vendors too, to be distributors for us or distributors for our vendors. Yeah, I mean, have done graphics and wayfinding for our garages. I have implemented garage music at a few properties. That's now. Cool. Yeah. Can't take much credit for that though, because Nards Entertainment they've learned us very well, and they, you know, are definitely one I can just let go and let them do it, and it's a great job.
Just get it done.
Yeah. And then we have like all of our digital rate boards too, which we directly align the graphics with any kind of branding that's going on with the property. So I try to pull off from the marketing catalogs that they use for leasing and stuff like that.
Okay. So
yeah.
I mean, what do you feel like? What's one of your favorite projects you've worked on recently?
Oh, favorite projects that I've worked on.
Or just interesting ones where you learned a lot or something. I mean, the wayfinding piece is really interesting because a lot of the facilities you guys have, there's a lot of foot traffic coming in and out. It's not just in the car, right?
Yeah.
It's foot traffic as well.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to think about all those different pieces.
I probably would just say the most recent project that I'm finishing up now, which is at our new headquarters. So it has been game on from day one and all eyes on me. Or at least that's how I tell myself, so I make sure things are done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we were delivered a design concept for a wayfinding package from a company in California that visited the site once. So that has been very challenging. I had to take the entire design intent that wasn't at a construction level drawing. And I think me and tech painting and I spent about at least, I don't know, 200 hours working on that design package and implementing it in the garage because the placements weren't correct. The wording was incorrect. It wasn't functional to where the placement put it. We had to manipulate it. We had to shrink it, so we had to create some alterations to it. So that was probably a more challenging wayfinding project that I've experienced, and definitely had to take something that we spent a giant chunk of change on and completely manipulate to make it work. So it is definitely important, and I understand from like our painting vendors and our sign installers that they to them they follow things to a T. And sometimes that drives me crazy because I'm like, why would you mount that there? You know that it's not functional. Like, someone's going to walk right into it.
See some common sense.
But it was on the map. That's where it said it goes. So now I've learned that, and I have to be extremely literal sometimes, where I literally take a picture and finger draw on there and send it and say, this is the exact location of where things need to go, which has helped everyone in the long run. But,
yeah, that's never fun. I mean, yeah, I understand what you mean, though. You can look at it and you go, like, I know this is what the drawing said, but did you look at it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like, really? Or like, we'll put a brand new painted graphic on a wall and they install a sign right in the middle of the word. And I'm like, come on, man. Like,
Or they come and put the Coke machine right in front of your...
Yeah. It's just, it's really interesting sometimes. And, I have to remind myself to step back and just be like, okay, it's fixable. We can do it. We can correct it. But definitely makes the job more challenging overall. And yeah, but that's been it. That wayfinding project was hard. It was my first real project that covered ripping out old infrastructure and putting in new, as well as still dealing with an operator on site, training them, getting them accustomed. And this time around, Nick and I personally went to every single tenant. I personally went to a single tenant over and over again with training, information. I've walked with them to even pick out their reserve locations.
Sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah. But it's been painstaking, but it's hopefully all worth it at the end. But it does hurt a lot when you install something and then the next day you come in and it's already been hit by a car, which I've had on this project 3 times now.
It happens more often than you would think.
Yeah.
I usually try to, we were doing parks installations, like the construction company always wants to push ahead and we need your equipment in right away. It's like, well, you still got forklifts in the garage and they got to get all this construction equipment out. Like, we really shouldn't put our stuff down until that's gone.
Yeah.
But.
And I didn't know, I'm really struggling now because I have to get a corner guard made to protect like a panel on our bulkhead signage. And to find someone to make a corner guard has been so difficult. I didn't realize that custom fabrication was that hard. Or that they don't even make things like that. Like, they make bollards and like, typical little styrofoam corner guards you put on columns, but nothing that's like a structural.
It's substantial enough to stop something from happening.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we're a large company, and I try to look at it in perspective also that we should try to find ways to save money instead of just shelling it out. And we pay these design companies a crazy amount of money to come up with these drawings that we could easily replicate or manipulate to apply elsewhere. And I've even argued to the point where I think we should hire a design company and create one design package that can be applicable for all.
So that'd be like a branding manual.
Yeah.
Where you could just make color changes or something like that. That's a great idea. That would... Instead of paying someone to start over every time, I mean...
Yeah. And it would definitely simplify our lives, but there are other people that are now getting into the garage. So now you have our marketing department that's now intrigued by it, and now we have, a giant client like Amazon. So Crystal City is going to be a real sensitive topic for everyone, and how it's approached and thought about, and how they want to create the footprint of the building to be individualistic. So that even marks that section of the garage, even if the garage spans 5 buildings.
I think it's an amazing opportunity, though. I mean, you're working on a huge project there, especially in Crystal City. I mean, they're changing the name of Crystal City, right?
Yes. It's National Landing. I should be referring to it as
National
National
Landing.
Landing.
Is that officially done yet, or is it?
It should be coming in the next few months, I believe, that they'll be doing all the swaps.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going to have to change their driver's license and everything. What are the logistics of changing the name of a city?
Oh my gosh, it's going to be crazy. Because not only is it Crystal City, but it's part of Potomac Yard and it's part of Pentagon City.
Oh.
So that's why they wanted to rename the whole area as National Landing. So it's
Okay.
all in one kind of category together. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be really intense. The marketing team should be prepared because they went through and had to replace every sign or anything that said Vornado on it to JBG Smith.
Oh, so
and we're still finding ones to this day that say Vornado on it.
We saw that yesterday.
yeah, it's crazy. You'll be like looking like, wait a minute, like that shouldn't be there. But I mean, they probably replaced, gosh, hundreds of thousands of those logos.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you were talking about your vendors that you work with a lot. So what do you look for in a vendor?
Their willingness to work with me, withholding their frustration at times, and kind of approaching it with the attitude like, you're the client, and
Patience.
Yes, patience is key. And I always try to go with every vendor and say, look, like, if we give you constructive feedback, or we ask you to do something, or we point out a pain that we've seen, it's not to hurt you or to deceive you or to damage your product or anything. If anything, we're just trying to help you grow and expand your business, right? And so,
or shape them into the company that you want to do more work with, right?
Yeah. And which is why we try to approach it with standards, and we say, this is what we like, this is what we typically go with. Is it something that you can replicate or do? And if it's the case, then great. But a lot of time too is that I am kind of approached with all these like quick deadlines, and so I have to push the vendors to work on a quick deadline. And I know that stress on those people, it's difficult and hard to manage at times, but it shouldn't be shown to me. And so that's been challenging, and sometimes we get very vendor specific where we like to keep, they do a great job and they do good work and they come in at a fair price and they get multiple jobs. But sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we can't keep awarding them jobs because then they get comfortable. And we've had that problem, So
it's really too bad, isn't it?
it is too bad. And sometimes, when they get like that, we just like kind of check them real quick and be like, hey,
I wonder if like a master services agreement would help.
Well, and we're trying to avoid doing those because we found ourselves getting into them, and then...
Well, not something you have to go with, but just setting the rules for how you work with us. So people probably hate me for saying this, but, having favored nation clauses in your contracts is making sure that you get the best price in the market.
Yeah, and we don't always take the lowest bid either. Sometimes I don't feel comfortable doing that because I've seen what...
It doesn't have to be
produced.
low bid, but if you offered that product on the market...
Yeah. So. And we've actually... we have done master agreements for EV charging.
Okay.
But... and we have like new charging companies coming on the market that we've done like... in agreements would say like, well, we will bring them to the table as an option, but doesn't mean we need to go with them, which has helped. But I mean, I'm managing contractors for lighting, contractors for garage music and rate boards, contractors for just general infrastructure for parking equipment, networking.
So garage music isn't something that I've seen much of. Mm-hmm. Tell me about it.
So it's just a Sirius XM player.
Okay.
We install these outdoor rated speakers throughout the garage. And we typically point them inward into the drive aisles to bounce the sound. We have learned the more cars you have, the music sounds lower, and then the less cars you have, the music sounds louder. Obviously for acoustics.
What kind of music are you playing?
So we have a playlist chosen by our marketing department.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
What are some
does.
songs that are on it?
So we go by stations. So we have like Yacht Rock and EDM Fridays. Yeah. So it switches twice a day, every day. And we have like smooth jazz on Mondays. And so it's kind of interesting. It kind of touches, I think, everyone's eclectic music tastes.
Have you received any feedback from?
We have. We've had tenants who love it. We've had tenants who hate it and say it makes them feel uncomfortable and not safe in the garage.
Because there's music?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Like they can't hear someone behind them or something like that. We've also faced issues like where at Central Place, we didn't install CO sensors when the building was constructed. So the fans in the garage just run 24/7, which then means we have to turn the volume up really loud because the fans are so loud. So it's been interesting. You know, I think it takes a little getting used to. It definitely took Nick and I a little while to get used to. But sometimes it's a nice delight to open your door and you hear a favorite song on. So,
what are you guys doing with lighting in the facilities? Is it all like what's the latest in lighting?
Yeah, so
there's all these little rabbit holes you can go into on all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you certainly, I don't know if you necessarily notice good lighting in a garage, but you certainly notice it when it's bad.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And some of them, they're really bad.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Like
this is like, it's like I said, grandma's basement. Yeah. And that's definitely something that we have strived to get away from. And really honing on this point of like, yes, the garage is your first and last point that your customer touches, and we need to make sure it feels just as nice and aesthetically appealing as the building does. So we typically go with we have a favorite fixture that we like to put in the entry drive lanes that kind of overlights it. It's kind of like a airline strip in a way. And it's definitely helped for daylight and nighttime. For daylight time, you're having a little bit longer of a shift in your eyes getting into the garage. And then for nighttime, it's obviously very vibrant and you can point it out from anywhere.
That's a great idea. So, I mean, because usually you're kind of driving around looking for the entry to the facility, but if it's very obvious to you when you come across it, that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For just typical lighting throughout the garage, I mean, we typically span an 8-foot fixture over 3 stall bay, and then we'll have one in the drive lane. So you'll have 3 fixtures kind of in a tier. And for like a structural garage that we just did, that's 9 floors, about 750 some spaces, we probably put in about close to 600 fixtures.
Wow.
And we started with 300 and it was just way too
many dark places in between.
Yeah, too many dark places in between. And we were trying a new fixture by Sylvania just to test it out, and based on what they recommended, it really didn't really hit our standards, so we had to go in and add a lot more. And especially with that specific location is our new HQ, so it really has to be all the bells and whistles.
It has to be amazing.
Yeah.
Have you thought about doing we looked at it, we saw pictures of it before, we were looking at doing the contrast painting for the spaces. Are you going to get to do that?
I would love to do that. I don't know.
Amazing.
I know. It's just the traffic coating paint to put down has been a struggle that we've seen, especially if it's like on grade, because there's typically a sealant that's put on the concrete and the paint doesn't adhere for long.
What if the sealant can be incorporated all into the same thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it would probably cost us a pretty penny to do it that way. Okay. Yeah. Just cause it's a lot of paint. And striping typically is not very expensive. But yeah, I mean, it would be cool to really do.
It
if
sure
we could
looks
try
nice.
it. Yeah, it does.
You have to try it on like a small underground garage.
But a lot of our garages have garage membrane laid down. It's like a darker gray membrane, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to do that kind of design.
I wonder if you could just you could use that, incorporate that, what they're already doing with the membrane, make that part of it, and just have them do it a different color in that spot. Mm-hmm. Just do something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely looks cool. I saw a picture of it. I was like, ooh, that would be fun to try.
You guys going to do more guidance, or?
We are implementing Indect at 1900 N Street Northwest. It's a new property we just opened, commercial property.
Okay.
A lot of tandem spaces, which we hate, but it was part of a lease requirement. So now tenants are kind of catching on to it and creating it as part of a lease negotiation for new build outs.
So now that the number of spaces is kind of being reduced that you have to build per square foot, are you finding that it's enough?
No, I mean, we always like to advocate that build more parking because we can use it for something else in the future. If, everyone thinks that autonomous vehicles are going to take over tomorrow. But
it's going to be at least a few more weeks.
Yeah. I mean, it's expensive, and a lot of people don't realize that. It's like, if you build a structural garage, it's about $20,000 a space. Now, if you go below below sea level, then you're talking about $80,000 a space. So your typical return on that is not going to be for a good 20, 25 years.
Wow.
And yeah, so we get the argument, right? Like, why build more parking? But Nick always says, like, if you don't have parking, how are people going to get to the building? And if you can't get people to the building, well, then you can't lease the building. It's just same logic as having retailers, right? So, we have been making the argument. We have been presenting it to our development leads, especially with National Landing and all the new development coming in. And we're doing like a giant analysis of all of our parking ratios, all of our outstanding lease agreements, all of our new entertaining brokerage agreements, and kind of taking it from there. We have seen a lot of residential properties that we have being built at like a 0.2 or 0.4. And
so what does that mean exactly?
So typically like a commercial space will get like 1 per 1,000.
Okay.
So if you're comparing it to 1 per 1,000 square feet, if you're comparing that to residential, you're talking like typically only a 2-bedroom apartment would be able to get a spot, not a studio or 1 bedroom.
Really?
Yeah, that's kind of how they're building it as. So, you have 400 or 500 apartments, you only have about 110 parking spaces. And with residential properties, that's typically where the car is going to stay most often. And typically you have multiple people living in one apartment that all have a vehicle, or you have someone who has a fleet of vehicles. And it has been an ongoing problem. Even when I didn't work for JBG Smith, when I worked for Bazzuto, we had the same problem too. Even at properties where we had free parking or, giant surface lot parking. It's just always an issue. Because, if people have guests and they have parties and they have deliveries and all this stuff. So it's like, how do you factor in all the integration for all those things?
And you probably can't get a street permit in that area if you're part of that complex. You're supposed to park there, so
correct.
They're not going to give you extra.
Yeah. And DC is starting to doing that too. Like if you live in a building that has a garage, they have the choice to not give you a street permit.
Well, they're starting to pull back spaces on the curb in DC.
Yeah.
So that's coming as well.
Yeah, and a lot of those are getting converted to either rideshare, space drop off, pickups or loading zones, fire lanes.
My friend of mine, Brett, they were talking with UPS and FedEx. I mean, they budget to spend $1 million a year on parking tickets. So if they can actually use that effectively, the city can come up with a plan so that they can get that revenue still, but actually have it fit within their rules and give them good space instead of having them double park, and all that ends up being a lot better for them.
They should take that money and build something software-wise that could direct their parkers to where to park.
I think there's a whole bunch of people trying to do that right now. The fight for the curb is definitely on.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Parking is not going away anytime soon. And even if we have autonomous vehicles, people are going to take a really hard time.
So, I usually I love the analogy of when the internet came out, right? When everyone thought by like 2002 that 90% of shopping was going to be done online just because it was available at the time. And now it's bumping against like 25%.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I mean,
apparently Old Navy's killing it.
Yeah. But I think from an autonomous vehicle standpoint, I think they'll be available in the next 5 years for purchase. I think you'll be able to get one. but I don't think they're going to be at scale for 20.
Mm-hmm.
Like really at scale to where it really starts having an effect.
Yeah, I mean, you have to change a lot of people's behaviors.
Car ownership too may decline as well.
Yeah. But then you like look at, the 1965 Ford Bronco and selling for $500,000 because people want one so bad. So it's interesting. I just, I don't think that
it's not going to go away. It's obviously, I think we're
a long ways. I mean, we're generations away from being a fully
that being
automated.
the norm, right? From
Yes.
iRobot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, cool. This has been fun. Anything else you want to catch up on before we end it?
No, I mean, if you have any other questions.
No, I think we're good. No, that's
Okay.
good. We're going to want to have you on again, though.
Okay.
This is fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's a really unique perspective, though, because,
Mm-hmm.
and I think what you're doing over there is, it's not the norm in the market. There's nobody else. There's no other real estate investment trust doing it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. They should. I think it's definitely been beneficial for JBG Smith. Whether people see it or not right now, and like I said, it's going to take training and time to get everyone accustomed to having us as a resource. But I mean, we have other companies that contact us all the time. They just want to ask us questions or hire us as a consultant.
How did you do that?
Yeah, exactly. Did it work? And people just don't even know. I mean, we go to panels all the time where I talk to people that are, high level in giant companies like the World Bank and stuff. And so they're doing, I'm like, that was 5 years ago. You guys are totally behind. And the amount of money they waste. I mean,
it was so funny. I was thinking about our last conversation, and I was in a garage, and we were over in Clarendon.
mm-hmm.
And damned if the loading dock wasn't in the ramp of the entry to the garage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a famous one. Every
morning, the guy said for like 30 minutes, the entrance of the garage was going to be jammed up with the loading dock, and they had to route people down the exit aisle to get people into the facility. And it's just...
Yep, we have that situation actually in Crystal City. And it is a nightmare.
So if you're a designer of parking garages and facilities, don't put the loading dock next to
Yes, preferably put the loading dock on the other side of the building.
Completely.
Yeah. Yeah. We see, I mean, even with the two buildings we have by National Stadium, West Ave and 1221 Van, that Van Street is just, they have three loading docks and 2 garage entrances right now. And there's about to be a third building coming into play. And it is a monstrosity.
I'd say that area too where I was at, not only do you have that, but it also lets out right to a traffic light.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a famous one too. Yeah, all these things that we've slowly been like, okay, it's not going to work, which
change it.
We've helped a lot with Amazon's new buildings and stuff, really pointing those things out. So, and how to get, traffic around. And we have traffic control companies that we've hired on that have helped a lot, that we are confident in their decisions and their models to make work. But sometimes it doesn't always play out. Like 1900 N, the garage ramp is so steep that they apparently claimed it was going to clear a Lamborghini, but we had a Porsche the other day that bottomed out. So, it's, and I, as much as I want to, badger on the construction workers and stuff and how things aren't done right the first time. I mean, it's amazing that they can take a conceptual design and build it, right? And
Absolutely.
You see these things come to life and you're like, wow, like I can't even imagine how that pieces together, but it does. But hey, you missed the spot here, we got a leak here. So, yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, it's really cool to be a part of it all.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
Catch up again soon.